You ever have one of those moments where life just stops? Where the world freezes, and you know, without a shadow of a doubt, that nothing will ever be the same again. That's what happened to me on that quiet Sunday morning when a stranger on my land decided she knew better than I did. She didn't just question me. She dialed 911 on me. But before I tell you how it all unraveled, I want you to picture this: an old family farm, surrounded by rolling fields of golden wheat and fences that creak under the weight of the years. The smell of earth, sweat, and hay clings to everything. For me, that farm isn't just dirt and wood. It's my history, my inheritance, my sanctuary. Every corner of it carries my father's laughter, my mother's cooking, and my childhood dreams. And on that morning, I was out there alone, tending to the animals, when a woman I'd never met, someone who didn't belong, marched onto my property like she owned the place. Her name, Karen. At first glance, she looked like anyone you might pass at the grocery store: perfectly ironed shirt, hair stiff with hairspray, sunglasses too big for her face. But behind those shades was something sharp, something always looking for a fight. You know the type, the one who sees the world not as it is, but as something to control. She saw me with my hands deep in work, mud up to my elbows, sweat dripping down my temples. And instead of greeting me like a neighbor, she narrowed her eyes. "Excuse me," she snapped, stepping closer to the fence. "What exactly do you think you're doing here?" I blinked, stunned. "Mom, I'm working. Feeding my livestock. This is my land." But she didn't believe me. She crossed her arms, chin lifting as if she were the sheriff of the county. "I don't think so. You don't look like you own this place. And you don't look like you belong here." Her words stung more than I'd like to admit, because, truth be told, I'd been fighting that same doubt for years. After my parents passed, some folks whispered that I wasn't cut out for farm life, that I didn't have the grit, the patience, the backbone to keep the place alive. I'd lost crops to storms, animals to sickness, and nights of sleep to worry. But I kept going, because this was my family's blood and sweat in the soil. And here she was, a stranger, digging into that wound. "Mom," I said again, firmer this time, "this land has been mine since the day my father left it to me. You're trespassing." But she wasn't listening. She already had her phone out, fingers flying across the screen. "I don't believe you. I'm calling the police. People like you need to be checked." And that's when she did it. She dialed 911. Now, let me pause here. Imagine being accused of being a thief on your own land. Imagine someone questioning your right to breathe the air your parents breathed, to walk the fields your grandparents plowed. That phone call wasn't just an insult. It was a knife to the heart. I stood there frozen, listening to her give the dispatcher some wild story about a suspicious man trespassing on private property. I wanted to scream, to rip the phone from her hands, to prove her wrong right then and there. But something stopped me. Something deeper. Because the truth is, I had a secret. A truth Karen couldn't have imagined in her wildest accusations. A truth that, once revealed, would silence her and everyone who ever doubted me. But that moment hadn't come yet. Instead, I let her rant, let her spin her lies into the phone. And while she spoke, memories of my father came rushing back. The way he used to put a steady hand on my shoulder when life got rough. "Son," he'd say, "when people don't see your worth, don't waste your breath proving it to them. Just keep working, and let your actions speak louder." So I bit my tongue. I didn't fight back. Not yet. Karen hung up, smug as ever. "Police are on their way," she said with a smirk. "We'll see who really owns this place when they get here." But as she stood there, satisfied, I couldn't help but notice something in her eyes. Beneath the bravado, there was fear. Not fear of me, but fear of being wrong. Fear of losing control. And I realized then that people like her lash out because they're scared of a world they can't dictate. I leaned against the fence, wiped the sweat from my brow, and said calmly, You might want to sit down. Mom. It's going to be a long wait. Minutes stretched into an eternity. My animals stirred nervously, sensing the tension in the air. Karen paced like a cat on a hot tin roof, throwing glances at me as if I were about to commit some crime in broad daylight. And I just kept working, feeding, watering, tending, as though she wasn't there. And then, in the distance, I heard it. The sound of tires crunching gravel. A patrol car pulling up the long dirt road to the farm. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with anticipation. Because I knew this was the moment everything would change. Karen straightened her shirt, plastered a fake look of concern on her face, and waved down the officer like she was the victim of some grand injustice. "Thank goodness you're here," she cried. "This man is trespassing on private property. He doesn't belong here. He's threatening me." The officer glanced from her to me, his eyes steady, waiting for an explanation, and that's when I reached into my back pocket, pulled out my worn leather wallet, and flipped it open. Karen froze. Her words caught in her throat. Because staring back at her, glinting in the sunlight, was the last thing she expected to see. My badge. Her jaw dropped. She stumbled backward, the color draining from her face. For the first time since she stepped foot on my farm, she was speechless. And in that silence, in that heavy moment where truth stood taller than lies, I finally felt the weight lift off my shoulders. Because she didn't just see a farmer anymore, she saw the whole truth. Karen's silence hung in the air like a heavy storm cloud. The badge in my hand glimmered under the sun, and for the first time, she wasn't the one in control. The officer stepped closer, his eyes moving from my face to the badge and back again. Then he nodded slowly, with a look of respect. "Deputy," he said. "Everything all right here?" I gave a calm smile, though my heart was pounding in my chest. "Just fine, officer." This woman here was concerned. Thought I didn't belong on my own farm. Karen's lips moved, but no words came out. Her face burned crimson, and she stammered. I didn't know, I thought. The officer raised a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "Mom, this man isn't trespassing. He's the rightful owner of this property, and more importantly, he's law enforcement. You owe him respect." It was like a verdict had been delivered in court. Karen, the self-appointed judge of my life, had been overruled. By truth itself. She swallowed hard, her shoulders slumping. I'm sorry. She glanced around nervously, looking anywhere but my eyes. I didn't know. But I wasn't ready to let her off the hook so easily. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted her to see. To understand the damage words and assumptions can cause. "Mom," I said gently, "do you know what it feels like to have your worth questioned on your own land? To be told you don't belong where your whole life has been built?" She hesitated. Her lips trembled. And for the first time, her tough facade cracked. I suppose not," she admitted quietly. The officer gave me a subtle nod, as if telling me to take it from here. So I did. We stood there, the three of us, in the golden afternoon light. My animals grazed peacefully nearby, oblivious to the storm of emotions. And I told her my story, not the short, easy version, but the raw, unfiltered truth. How my parents had worked this land until their hands bled. How, when they passed, everyone thought I'd sell the farm because I was too young. Or too soft. How I fought every single season against droughts, debts, and doubts, yet still kept the place alive. I told her how I joined the force, not just to wear a badge, but to serve and protect people, even the ones who doubted me. Because my father taught me that strength isn't about proving yourself louder than others, it's about standing firm, even in silence, until the truth speaks for itself. As I spoke, I saw her eyes soften. The sharpness faded, replaced by something more vulnerable, guilt, maybe, or realization. "I didn't think," she whispered. I saw you, and I assumed." I nodded. That's the problem. Too many people assume before they ask. They judge before they understand. And those assumptions, They wound deeper than you realize. Tears welled in her eyes, and for the first time since she arrived, she looked less like the villain of this story and more like a flawed human. One who'd let fear and pride cloud her judgment. "I'm sorry," she said again with more sincerity. "Truly, I was wrong." The officer gave a small smile, tipped his hat, and headed back to his car, leaving us standing there in the quiet. The dust from his tires drifted into the air, and with it, the tension seemed to fade. Karen turned to leave, but I stopped her with one last thought. "Ma'am," I called out. "You came here today ready to tear someone down. But let me tell you something my father once told me. A farm doesn't grow without rain, and people don't grow without being challenged. Maybe today was your rain. Maybe it's time you start looking at folks differently." She paused, nodded slowly, and walked away without another word. The days that followed were strange. Word spread through the small town faster than wildfire. Everyone heard about the Karen who called 911 on the deputy farmer. Some laughed, some shook their heads, some were outraged on my behalf. But for me, it wasn't about the humiliation she caused. It was about the reminder that no matter how much you give, no matter how hard you fight, there will always be people who doubt you. People who try to strip away your worth. But worth isn't something anyone else can decide. It's written in your blood, in your sweat, in every seed you plant, and every dream you water with your tears. And that's what I wanted people to hear. Not just the drama of Karen's call, not just the shock of the badge reveal, but the truth that runs deeper. That every one of us belongs exactly where we stand, no matter who tries to tell us otherwise. One evening, about a week later, I was closing up the barn when I saw a car pull into the drive. My guard went up at first, but when the door opened, I saw her, Karen. She stepped out holding something in her hands. A pie dish wrapped carefully in foil. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," she said softly, "but I wanted to say thank you. For teaching me something I should have known a long time ago. For not holding hate in your heart when I gave you every reason to." She handed me the pie, and I took it, not because I needed it, but because it was a sign of something bigger, growth. I smiled. "We all mess up, ma'am. What matters is what we learn after. Just don't let assumptions guide you again. Lead with questions, not judgments." She nodded, a faint smile breaking across her face. "I'll remember that." And with that, she left. I stood there in the fading light, the farm stretching out behind me, and I realized something powerful. Life isn't about proving yourself to the Karens of the world. It's about knowing, deep in your bones, who you are and what you stand for. It's about living with so much truth that when the lies come, they shatter against it like glass. Karen thought she could define me with a phone call. But in the end, the only thing that defined me was the badge in my hand, the soil beneath my feet, and the legacy of my family's farm. So, if you take anything from this story, let it be this: when someone tells you that you don't belong, don't fight them with anger. Stand tall, stand firm, and let the truth, your truth, be louder than their doubts. Because one day, like Karen, they'll be left speechless, and you'll still be standing on the land you were always meant to call your own. And message: never let assumptions, prejudice, or doubt steal your worth. You belong where you've planted yourself, and your truth is stronger than any false judgment.